Hello, everyone. We're going to start with the fighting during the Iran-Iraq War. So the idea of this presentation is that we're going to look at the war in the three main theaters, being the air, the land, and the sea. But we're also going to look at this war within the context of five different phases. So the first phase being when Iraq attacks, the second phase being when Iran counterattacks, the third phase being when Iran tries to push into Iraq but fails, the fourth phase being like a stalemate, and then the fifth phase would be like the final battles where they're really trying to be decisive. So we're going to start with the first phase, and the first phase is going to be Iraq's attacking of Iran. If you remember, when we're looking at the causes, that the idea is that Saddam Hussein wanted to attack Iran after the Iranian Revolution. He realizes that they're weak, and this might be the way for him to become, the main power in the region. So, however, he was really poor about giving his officers, heads up, and it was really poorly planned, this initial assault. So, for example, he did not give his military orders until 2 hours before the assault, or at least his Air Force. So the reason they have to do this at 12 noon on September 22nd is that the pilots are not very good. They don't have the ability to have night vision. They can't use the radar, so they have to rely on, daylight and using, visual targets that they can actually see. So what they were instructed to do was bomb the runways instead of bombing the aircraft, which is something that we talked about in the initial start. The Iranians, they're able to rebuild the runways, and this was just really a poor effort. And they counterattack, because the Iraqis weren't able to hit any aircrafts. Moving on with the land assault. The initial land assault had 6 pretty largely uncoordinated attacks. The Iraqis were almost as surprised as the Iranians that they were going to attack that day. But they did catch them by surprise, and they were lucky that the Iranians had limited resistance on the border. They only had, some police units and whatnot. The Iraqis, they didn't really respond very well when the Iranian forces, did send reinforcements and they were able to attack. But they did make, some decent gains. However, these gains are, their furthest reach is going to be about 1% of Iranian territory. They're maybe getting, a little less than 100 kilometers into the country. The idea is that the Iraqis also wanted to be like the liberators of this region. So this region is kind of mixed between Arabs and Persians in this area. And they wanted to be the liberators of the Arabs that are living along the border. However, once they got there, the Iraqi troops, they weren't all on board. They started calling the people living in this region, traitors to all Arabs, and they started executing them, and it was just a really bad look. So this would, spread to the local tribes, and, the tribalistic culture in this region just made this a really big mess. So the Iraqis, they're also able to capture a couple of cities along the border. However, they don't really do a good job of, capturing the roads that lead between the cities or destroying the roads. So really, the Iranians have the mechanisms to be able to counterattack very easily. On top of this, the Iraqis had very incompetent leadership. One of the major battles where the Iranians want to kind of counterattack this initial offensive is that there was political pressure on the secular president, Bani Sadr. He was being pressured by the Ayatollah and everybody who was at the point, all the religious leaders in Iran. They're saying Allah is on our side, so let's attack. So they attack, and during this attack, they do a really crappy job because they attack during the rainy season. They broadcast their plans over the radio, and when they attack, they're stuck in the rain, and the Iraqis already know what's coming. So it's just turns into a giant mess, and it shows the incompetence of everybody during this initial war. So what this meant, and kind of the importance of this battle, was that the Iranians they would lose all of the military equipment that they already have. If you remember, they have military equipment from the United States. They had, while the Shah was in power, they had that equipment. However, once they lose it, it's lost because the rest of the world is not really willing to trade with Iran. So once they lose this military equipment, they have to, trade at, twice the original value of different things to be able to get it in, and they're really not able to do this. In addition, Bandi Sadr, the secular president, he's kind of in a really bad position. More on this later, but the Ayatollah Khomeini becomes, the person with the most moral authority, the high ground. He's showing the incompetence of the secular leaders, so they're able to move forward. Iraq, on the other hand, they're not able to counterattack. So it becomes this defensive victory. And, yes, they have the victory, but they don't push forward and make it decisive. Additionally, you have theaters along the sea. So what both sides do within the Persian Gulf is how the sea battles work is they're going to become tanker wars. So they're going to be firing at, the two sides. They're going to try to export their oil to other countries so that, that's where most of their profits are going to come from. So both sides put like this maritime exclusion zone where other ships can't go into, and if they do, then they're at risk of being attacked by each other's navy. Um, However, really only a handful of tankers are ever attacked at this early stage of the war. There maybe 2% of them are ever actually hit and damage is caused. So therefore, the profits of being able to ship the oil for these countries that are desperate for profits, they're both desperate to be able to sell their oil so that they can buy weapons. It became very. It made some very wealthy people who are willing to risk, the chance that they might get attacked. Additionally, with the Navy, so both sides, their Navy, they weren't really under the same pressure as the armies and air forces were. Really, they were kind of given what I call salutary neglect, where they're said, "You guys do your thing off there, and we won't really try to control you." Whereas the army is, meticulously controlled by Saddam Hussein and the Ayatollah. They have their fingers all over it, and they can't really do anything. However, same thing with the Air Force. The Air Force, they're trying to control it. However, the Navy on both sides, they're kind of, not very high tech. So therefore, they're just kind of, led to do whatever they want to do. And we're going to stop there, and we'll move on with the next video with phase 2.